Today, a baby girl will be born. And when her brand new eyes finally adjust and focus, she will meet the loving gaze of her mother and father, who will be awestruck by her immediately evident brilliance and beauty. And they will instantly agree that they will stop at nothing to make sure that their daughter realizes and unleashes her potential upon the world. And in that same hospital, another newborn girl will lie in the nursery crying, uncomforted, the unwanted byproduct of a young mother's search for validation with a guy who used her body as a waste receptacle for his own dysfunction. These two baby girls are equally vulnerable, but one will leave the hospital to go home to a protective, supporting environment, and the other little girl will be raised to fear the darkness of night, because in the dark, that's where she's violated by her mother's many boyfriends. The one little girl will discover a zest and a zeal for learning in a supportive school with encouraging teachers, while the other girl will experience failure in school because her anger and her hopelessness leads to suspensions for acting out. One girl will look out at the audience at graduation and find that familiar loving gaze of her parents, while the other girl will look out through prison bars and see the distrustful glare of the guards. But it doesn't have to be this way, because within every single one of us in this room lies a transformative power. The power to see beyond the girl's behavior and believe in her potential. There was a groundbreaking report that was released last year that articulated a truth that those of us that serve girls at the greatest risk for delinquency have long known. A girl's pathway to delinquency is different than a boy's pathway to delinquency. See, we have long known that a boy's pathway, particularly boys of color, has been defined as the school to prison pipeline. For girls, however, this report articulated that girls are most vulnerable to a sexual abuse to prison pipeline. 80% of girls in the juvenile justice system, 8 out of 10, report experiencing sexual violence as children. Add to that experiencing physical abuse and mental abuse and family instability and poverty and school failure, and of course, you have a recipe for delinquency. In 1980, girls made up 20% of the juvenile justice population in our country. And despite a national decline in juvenile incarceration rates in recent years, girls comprised 29% as of 2012. But what we know is that girls are far less likely than boys to be arrested for violent crimes. Instead, girls are often arrested for offenses such as truancy, running away, and substance abuse. Offenses that I submit to you are often simply outgrowths of an attempt to escape trauma. When you put all this together, the question then becomes, what do you do? What is the solution? What is the call to action? Well, I'm extremely pleased to stand here today and be able to introduce you to an organization that I have the privilege of working for, that for the past 31 years has created 37,000 stories of success for girls across the state of Florida. This organization is called PACE Center for Girls. And we were created because there was a recognition that girls are typically arrested for running away from something. Girls are typically arrested for acting out from something. There is something that is prompting the behavior, and if we don't address that something, we are going to continue to see girls arrested. Last year in the state of Florida, PACE served 2,130 girls in our 19 non-residential centers that provide an alternative school environment. Just to give you a picture of the girls that we served, almost 80% of our girls had experienced school failure in the form of grade retention or suspension or expulsion. Another third of our girls had a history of being arrested. But here's why we know PACE works. On the flip side of those statistics, 90% of our girls transitioned out of PACE at grade level or ahead. 92% of our girls never went on to meet the system again. We know PACE works, and here's why. Secretary Perez made a very salient point when he said that education is the great equalizer. So the reality is we have to have girls be healed. We have to have girls be re-engaged with an academic environment that prepares them to succeed, not just in life, but in school. Because once girls are engaged and disengaged from school, their chances for economic sustainability diminish rapidly. And what does that mean? Criminal behavior, because they're going to survive. So what do? We integrate academic preparation during the school day with counseling and therapy, with career and college exploration, because it's not just enough for a girl to have a visit once a week for 1 hour with a mentor. She needs deep interventions that are going to prepare her for life and equip her to cope, and not just to cope, but to thrive. Academic interventions. We also recognize that many times girls' behavior is an outgrowth of family dysfunction, and so we employ family-based case management. We work with families to stabilize what happens at home, because even though we have girls year-round for the school day, the reality is they leave us at the end of the day. And if they return home to dysfunction, every gain that they make at our center is going to be lost the moment they reach their doorstep. And so we make sure that families are stable and whole so that girls can succeed. I have to give credit to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, because a little known fact is that even though PACE has been around for more than 30 years, in the early 90s, it was a small seed grant that provided funding for us to open 4 centers in the state of Florida. And because PACE has had a proven impact, the state of Florida has gotten serious about juvenile justice reform. The Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, Florida Legislature, and Florida governors for the past 30 years have committed to creating bright futures for girls, so much so that we are now a line item in the state's budget, and we receive more than 20, thank you. We receive more than $20 million every year to serve girls in Florida, because it's not just enough to identify the problem. Problem identification in the absence of investment leads to problem magnification. You have to make the investment. One thing that I think is so important, and this is why we're actually working to scale our program now to Georgia, is when you have a model that works, you have a moral obligation to expand it and serve. And so we're in the midst right now of a longitudinal randomized controlled trial evaluation that will establish our program as evidence-based so that we can replicate our impact throughout this nation. You know, as Tony said earlier, we're often asked when we have programs at work, well, what is the secret sauce? What is it that makes what you do so effective? Well, we have more than 37,000 success stories, because our girls who were delinquent, who were labeled as problem girls, are now educators, doctors, attorneys, physicians, and they come back to us 10, 15, 20 years later and say, thank you for never giving up on me. So I want to illustrate our effectiveness as I close by giving you a story so that you understand why it works. A little girl was born to parents who didn't have a high school diploma. And her father wanted desperately to have a child, but her mother suffered from undiagnosed mental health issues. And as a result, when her daughter was born, she didn't want to see the girl, she didn't want to hold the girl. So the father was the one that created the safety for the daughter. But see, the problem with that was, while the mother was pregnant with the daughter, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And even though he fought a very valiant battle, he passed away shortly before her second birthday. So she was left with this mother who, 1, didn't want her, and 2, couldn't help herself. A couple of years after he passed away, the mother met a new boyfriend. He became her live-in boyfriend, and shortly thereafter, he began to routinely sexually violate the girl. And during her early elementary school years, she became labeled as a problem child because she was acting out. She was causing disruptions. And not once did anyone ever say, why? This is what makes PACE work. Is when our girls get angry, we don't say, what's wrong with you? We say, what happened to you? It wasn't until the 3rd grade that a teacher asked, what happened to you? And in the 3rd grade, this little girl who was experiencing so much trauma and instability at home finally found somebody who saw her, saw beyond her behavior, and recognized that this girl had the potential for greatness. And so what this teacher did in the 3rd grade is she helped that girl believe in herself. And as a result, the girl turned her behavior around, graduated from high school near the top of her class, and got a full scholarship to one of the top universities in her state. And the reason I know this story so well is because that little girl was me. What we have to realize is the power for girls to change begins by the power to make them believe in themselves. Because if we don't see beyond what the behavior is, we will never encourage them to empower themselves to change their behavior. We have to stop stopping at behavior. And at PACE, our tagline is believing in girls. A girl can curse us out. She can throw things. She cannot show up, but guess what? We're coming to get her because we believe that she is capable of greater. And we convince her of that. And as a result of that, she becomes interested in school. And she wants a better life. And so then she has a vision for her future. And that is the secret sauce. What I ask each of you to do today as I prepare to take my seat is this: never stop believing in girls. Girls are not okay. They need you. They need all of us. When we leverage our power of believing in the capacity of young people to do better, we convince them that they have the power to do better. And guess what? Results tend to rise to our level of expectation. Expect greater. Thank you.